Hey everybody. Hope you're doing good, man. This is Bo, and I'm going to be reading from the Atheist Handbook, or the Answer to the Atheist Handbook by Richard Wurmbrand. I haven't done so in a couple weeks. I've actually been taking a couple weeks off. It's been just busy since Thanksgiving. But if you remember, Wurmbrand was imprisoned um, by the Communist Party in Russia, and the Communist Party actually seized Romania and attempted to control churches for their purposes back in 1945. And Wurmbrand was arrested in 1948 along with his wife. And his wife was a slave laborer for 3 years. And Richard Wurmbrand spent 3 years in solitary confinement. And then he also spent more time in prison and was released in 1959. So that's over 10 years, 11 years that he was arrested. And so it was really wild, his story. And then he was rearrested and sentenced to 25 years in prison for being a Christian. And Wurmbrand was released in a general amnesty in 1964, and started Voice of the Martyrs. And you could always check that out, especially if you're into human rights and what's going on around the world when it comes to persecution and people that are dying, especially for just a faith, just a religious belief. So, really important to study him. Now, he's going to do a chapter on who is God, and this is really heady stuff, man. I was reading through some of it, and it was not really, I thought, simple. And some of his argumentation is, you could tell, is very much rooted in his day and really targeted towards what has been written in the Atheist Handbook. By the way, I got a picture of the Atheist Handbook up there. And I found that on eBay, and I thought that was cool that you could purchase that. And I think it was only like, it said 15, but I don't know if it was 15 euros or what it was. I can't remember right now, but I thought, man, that's really cool. It's like 420 pages, the Atheist Handbook that came out in, I think it was 1948? No, 1961, the Moscow Academy of Science put out the Atheist Handbook. And that was pretty much their curriculum to the society. So Wurmbrand wrote this book, The Answer to the Atheist Handbook, obviously to answer the statements made in the Atheist Handbook. So this is who is God. Since atheists do not accept the sacrifice of Christ on the cross, which cleanses us from sin, they cannot see God. But they are right to say to us, quote, "You assert that you see God. Tell us who he is," unquote. Very important question. It exists for both sides. Atheists must be able to say, quote, "Who is the one whose existence we deny," unquote, just as Christians must give an answer to the question, quote, "Who is the one in whom we believe," unquote. Who is God? De Broglie, the greatest contemporary theoretician, oh, my back, sorry about that, is the greatest contemporary theoretician in problems of light, wrote, quote, how much we would know if we knew what a ray of light is," unquote. The great biologist Jacob von Exkel wrote, "No one of us knows what life is," unquote, and we are asked to answer who the giver of life and light is? Meaning it's a difficult thing, right, to answer that question of who God is. And it's not and basically the idea is that if God is that simple, then he probably, or it wouldn't be God. We would imagine the answer to this question would be quite complex. So where is the difficulty in answering? When you ask, what is light or life? Or who is God? The difficulty lies not in the words what, who, life, light, or God. Somehow we can say what we mean by these words. What spoils the intelligibility is the smallest word in the questioning proposition, the word, quote, is. What does the word is mean? If we do not understand this, all the rest remains enigmatic. A great division passes through Christianity. It centers around the word is. According to the New Testament, what was actually written in Greek at the Last Supper, when the disciples before the crucifixion, Jesus had given them bread, saying, quote, this is my body, and a cup of wine, saying, quote, this is my blood, unquote. Orthodox and Catholic Christians believe that the word is, in this context, can mean only one thing, that Christians eat and drink at communion the real body and blood of Jesus. When the priests repeat the words of Jesus during the liturgy, a change takes place in the elements. Outwardly they remain bread and wine, but the essence has been transformed. What were bread and wine have become the body of Christ. Protestants read the same Bible and interpret the word is otherwise. It means for them that the bread at communion symbolizes the body of Christ. That whereas it is still only bread, it has another value. Just as a ring has increased value for the receiver when it comes from the beloved. That's kind of a cool thing, right? When someone calls you and it's someone special, the ring has a value to it that it doesn't, which is different from if it's just if you know it's just a kind of normal person, right? Not the beloved. When the beloved calls, it's something special. The fact that thousands of books have been written on this subject and great institutions split apart shows that the word, quote, is not as simple as it looks. You who wish to know, quote, who is God, or, quote, what is light, must first tell me what you understand by the word is. Christianity is not negative towards previous cultures. As we have already said, it incorporated in its thinking Greek philosophy predominantly from Aristotle. Christianity took the concept of a God who, himself unmovable, produces all the movement in the world. He sits quietly on an unshaken throne and rules all things and men, or mankind, in their unceasing motion. Aristotle would have said that God is, in the very strict sense of the word. But an unmoved mover is inconceivable. What is static cannot be active. A motor which moves a machine has its own movements. To a motor, another notion applies beyond more being. It moves. Reality does not know a being. Kant wrote in Critic of Pure Reason, quote, to be is so real predicate. In logical usage, it is only the copula or link of a judgment. To say that God is good or righteous makes sense. To say that God or any other subject simply is means to remain in the realm of vain words. When we ask ourselves what being means, the answer is that being exists only as a becoming, an evolving, a moving, a being changed. Heraclitus said, quote, panta rei, unquote, means everything flows. You cannot bathe twice in the same stream. Quote, you, unquote, cannot bathe in it even, quote, once. Because in this one period while you bathe, your body is changing and the river too. The elementary particles of which the world is comprised, the chemical elements as well as the spiritual realities, are not existences but events, happenings. While I pronounce the word, quote, iron, unquote, the electrons in the atoms of iron will have revolved many billions of times around the nucleus. When I come to the last letter, quote, N, unquote, The iron is no longer in the same state as it was when I pronounced the first letter, quote, I, unquote. Descend into the realm of microphysics and you will see the importance of apprehending this. No elementary particle in its continual motion has patience enough to stay in its place, at least long enough to give me time to say about it that, quote, it is, unquote. While I say, quote, the atom is, unquote, it has lived a history so rich that in comparison to it the whole history of mankind appears as a little thing. Sir James Jeans said, quote, matter is something which is, but which happens. So matter is not something which is, but which happens, unquote. Matter is not existence, but flowing. Everything, and especially living beings, is continually changing and being renewed. How can the one who moves everything be unmoved? If images of God were allowed and could convey reality, the most faithful image of God would be that painted by Michelangelo on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which shows God flying in the tempest. In the biblical book of Ruth, we read about the wings of God. My opponents say that God is not. They don't have the high-ranking Christian teachers, or they don't know the high-ranking Christian teachers said it long before, though they gave the negation the right meaning. The scholastic philosopher John Scott's Erigna wrote, quote, literally, God is not because he transcends being, unquote. That's kind of cool. So when someone says God is not, there's another side to that. Well, God is not in the sense that he transcends being, unquote. Thomas Aquinas said, quote, the divine being which is his substance is not the common, quote, to be. It is a being distinct from any other being, the divine to be. It is not common to be. The word, quote, being, unquote, is not only a noun but also a verb. No created being is something which could be expressed only by a noun, because it evolves, it moves, it lives a history. You cannot apply the category, quote, is, unquote, in the limited sense of having a fixed state to the creation, even less to the creator. When you say God is, you have said too little about him. God happens. I like that. That's kind of cool. When you say God is, right, you try to just have a simplistic God is blah, right? You have said too little about him. God happens. There's an every moving of God. There exists an event, quote, Godhead, unquote. He is a huge coming and becoming. His name in Hebrew is El, which expresses a relation. Quote, El, unquote, means, quote, toward, like going toward something. The movement from Alpha to Omega. That's cool. The literal translation of his Hebrew name, which he disclosed to Moses, Ahijah, Asher, Ahijah, is, quote, I will be what I will be, unquote. David the psalmist asked himself who God was and answered, quote, he rode upon a cherub, an angelic being, and flew. He flew upon the wings of the wind, Psalm 18:10. The Bible tells us that God rides on winged beings, or rather on winged events. Because the angels also, quote, are, unquote, not, but happen, in another psalm we read of God, quote, who makes the clouds his chariot, and who walks on the wings of the wind, Psalm 104:3. Compare this imagery, which is a genial anticipation of the modern scientific conception of the world, with the idea of an immovable motor of the universe, and you will discover how right the Bible is. In God there is no variableness, no shadow of turning, as regards his fixed character of love. But the manifestations of his love are new every moment. This creates the difficulty in answering the question, quote, who is God, unquote, because he sheds his goodness upon mankind in ever new forms. The flames of his love are changing continually, as do flames of fire. You cannot really make a portrait of a person. Every person is a succession of many facial expressions. You cannot really say a truth. Truth is always a whole chain of assertions about a changing object or person. Therefore, Hebrew, the language in which God first gave his revelation, does not have the word, quote, face, but only faces, unquote. Panem. Every man and every object changes its aspect continually. About God himself, the Bible also uses this plural, panem, or faces. He also changes constantly his expressions of love and righteousness. When you ask yourself, quote, who is God, unquote, thousands of images pass like a kaleidoscope before your eyes, each more beautiful than the other. Therefore it was forbidden to the Jews to make to themselves graven images. The Hebrew language avoids the expression, quote, is, unquote. Jesus, speaking Hebrew or its Aramaic dialect, never said, quote, this is my body, unquote, but simply, quote, this my body, unquote. Russians as well as Chinese also omit the verb, quote, to be, unquote. If theologians had known the biblical languages better, there would have been one quarrel less about what Jesus never said. We know what Jesus is, the Alpha, the creator of heaven and earth. We know what he will be, that, quote, all in all, unquote. What he is now, question, he is not an, quote, is. The atheists have a point. We cannot say who God is, nor can they say what atheism is. This also is continual evolution. The atheism of the fools of old who simply denied God has passed through many stages to become the militant and scientifically substructured atheism ruling in communist countries today. But the fact that we cannot say who God is does not exhaust our thinking. The Apostle Paul wrote, quote, since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, unquote. Romans chapter 1, verse 20. Giordano Bruno is the author of the play on words that intellectio, the intellect, is interna lectio, the internal lesson, which nature gives us. The more I know of a machine, the more I admire the engineer who conceived it. The more beautiful a palace, the more respect I have for the architect. The list of atheist scientists give by my opponents is spurious. So the list of atheist scientists given by my opponents is spurious. Our universe bears the name of Einstein. He must know something about it. He writes in the World as I See It, quote, if one purges the Judaism of the prophets and Christianity as Jesus Christ has taught it, all the subsequent additions, especially of priestcraft, one is left with a teaching which is capable of curing all the social evils of humanity. It is the duty of every man of good will to strive steadfastly in his own little world to make this really human teaching a living force as far as he can. If he makes an honest effort in this direction without being crushed and trampled under feet by his contemporaries, he may consider himself and the community to which he belongs lucky. In a preface to his biography by Burnett, he says, quote, the comic living of religion is the most powerful and noble motive for the scientific research of nature, unquote. Milner opens his book Relativity and the Structure of Stars with the words, quote, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, unquote. Immanuel Kant wrote, quote, as a face is beautiful because it unveils a soul, the world is beautiful because you see through it a God, unquote. Hegel, the founder of modern dialectic and the teacher of Karl Marx, asked philosophy to save religion. Francis Bacon said, quote, philosophy studied superficially and stranges from God. Studied in depth, it brings you back to God, unquote. There are many things which make believers of many scientists. They wonder about the concordance between the laws of nature and our possibilities of apprehension through the senses, reason, intuition, and faith. Unbelievers, if they wish to be logical, should not be atheists, but agnostics. Is there no creator? Question. Well, then, the universe is the random agglomeration, unguided by any wisdom, of ions, electrons, photons, and protons. My brain is also the result of such random evolution, according to the laws established by no lawgiver. How is it, then, that my brain, which is not a willed organ, intelligently constructed, can rightly understand so many things in the universe? Stalin said that not all things are known, but all things can be known. How is it that I have a brain which can know everything? Would lamps, batteries, wires thrown together without a preconceived design be able to catch radio transmissions? Would wheels, screws, levers, and brakes come together to make a car in which one can drive? The biologist Max Hartmann speaks out, quote, "the miracle of the harmony between the universe and our thinking," unquote. De Broglie says that there is more mystery than we believe in the simple fact that science is possible. Einstein wrote, quote, "What is eternally unintelligible in the universe is that it can be understood," unquote. Even Voltaire, whom the atheists wrongly considered to be one of their own number, said these words, quote, "The world is made with intelligence, therefore it has been made by an intelligence. The intelligence of a Newton comes from another intelligence," unquote. Who can believe that there are watches with no watchmakers, or watches tell time according to the movements of the earth? Who made this chronometer? The second thing which strikes everyone who looks attentively at creation is the stern order in nature, which also cannot be the result of chance. Cole says, We read in nature a whole musical score," unquote. The geologist Close writes, quote, "We hear the music of the earth," unquote. Kant, who is very critical of many reasonable proofs brought by theology for belief in the existence of God, admits the validity of the so-called cosmological proof. The order in nature points to a creator. Charles Darwin, victim of the mercantilist and utilitarian style of life in Great Britain of his time, thought nature also worked according to the utilitarian principle. But this is not so. In nature, a great artist and architect with imagination is at work. The exquisite beauty of the peacock's feathers cannot be explained as having evolved by the accumulation of small variations because they provided the advantage of more easily attracting mates. A female crow also finds a mate. Wayside weeds, as well as gorgeous lilies, attract bees and wasps for fertilization. Why are some tiny fish so uselessly beautiful? Well, it is art for art's sake. Why does the parrot have the capacity to speak? Why do bellbirds exist, whose chirping is like the ringing of little bells? Is it just the fancy of the artist? How about the horns of a deer? Why does the zebra have such regular stripes? Why does each flower have a different color? Nietzsche said, quote, "In every one of us there is a child who wishes to play," unquote. Is there not something childlike in God which made him create all these things? Does it not belong to the very essence of Godhead that it must be expressed also in a babe born in a stable and in a little boy who plays with others on the streets of Nazareth? From where came the precise angels and the symmetry and beauty of forms in crystals? From where came the precise angles and the symmetry and beauty of forms in crystals? How is it that the far east there exists the tailor bird, which sews its nest of leaves with threads of cotton spun by itself? How is it that the spider web surpasses the technical capabilities of men? On astronomical lenses, the thread of the spider web is used for measure. Men could not produce anything better or finer which would last longer and not be altered by changes of temperature. Men have invented radar, but they learned it from the bats, and we have wonderful optic instruments today, but which one surpasses the human eye? I know about a communist who became a Christian from looking at the delicate convolutions of his baby's ear. They were surely created by design. They could not have been created by any chance coming together at atoms. How can you believe in a wise creator when you investigate further the human ear, in which 24,000 nerve ends are united and strung in order to bring messages to the brain? Look carefully at a stalk of wheat. Its height would be something like 4.5 feet, and the diameter would be a mere 1/16 of an inch. For comparison, let us imagine a building 1,250 feet high. It would be a building of something like 100 stories. And this on the surface of only 1 square yard. Now, just at the top of the stalk is the heavy fruit. It is moved by winds, but does not break. The stalk contains a splendidly conceived mechanical system. It is still a mystery to men how the water ascends to the very top. We need pumps to provide water for the upper floors of our high buildings. We cannot make something as marvelous as the stalk. The physicist Urey, the discoverer of heavy water used in Norwegian research for atomic bomb, wrote, quote, "Not one of the existing theories about the origin of the world does not work without the presupposition of a miracle," unquote. And because we spoke about water, let us stop to look at its wonders. All physical objects expand with heat and contract with cold. Only water increases in volume when it cools down and forms ice. The ice being lighter than water remains on top. It forms a crust which saves the fish from the cold of the winter. Without this particular peculiarity of water, life in the rivers would be impossible, and animals that lived on fish would not have survived. What is the origin of this conception? Is it just an accident? Or what is the origin of this exception? Is it just an accident, or is there something ordered by a wise creator? Let us allow a renowned technician, Werner Siemens, to speak. Quote, "The more we penetrate in the sphere of the harmonic forces of nature, which are regulated by eternal immovable laws, hidden from our full understanding by a thick veil, the more we are pushed towards humility. The more our knowledge appears small, the more our desire to drink from this unquenchable source of science and knowledge increases. And in the same measure also grows an admiration towards the finite ordering wisdom, which is interpenetrating the whole creation. It is true that we cannot say, quote, 'Who is God?' unquote, but his unseen power can be seen if we look carefully at the things created by him. They speak about God as a mighty ruler and a great artist, and from them we know that God is a God of order. Jesus asked once by his disciples to show them the Father, and he answered, quote, 'Have I been with you so long, and yet you have not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father, so how can you say, show us the Father?' Unquote. Do you, quote, 'Do you not believe that I am in my Father, and my Father in me? The Father dwells in me, does the work,' unquote. John 14:9-10. By these words, Jesus teaches us how we should think about his person, and he also teaches us how we should think about ourselves. While maintaining a sense of proportion, let us note that whoever sees me or whoever sees you, even if you are the author of an atheistic book, sees the Father, because we are all created in his image and after his likeness. Gregory of Nyssa wrote, quote, 'Man is the human face of God,' unquote. Macarius wrote, quote, 'Between God and man there exists the closest familial relationship,' unquote. Any man, an atheist, a criminal, a saint, is wonderfully first of all because of his bodily structure. Even the worst and most despicable of men has a heart which is a pump, such as engineers are not able to construct. A pump which circulates the blood 600 times a day throughout the body. In a span of 50 years, this happens 1,840,000,000 times, and without a single minute of interruption. Secondly, man is a wonderful creature by virtue of his soul, another surprising entity, almost indefinable. It is so perfect that in a certain sense it can dispense the body. It shows its independence in the nice symphony of the deaf Beethoven, or in the dedicated life of Helen Keller, who, though deaf, dumb, and blind, became an author and a great philanthropist, or in the fact that Pascal, at the age of 9, rediscovered the axioms of Euclidean geometry, or in the life of Mozart, who began composing music at the age of 5. It also shows its independence from the senses of the experience of clairvoyance, telepathy, precognition, and hypnotism. In the hypnotic state of beating of the heart becomes so slight that it is almost like fibrillation. The man scarcely breathes at all. The blood barely moves through the vessels of the brain. It might not reach the capillary vessels. Without proper oxygenation, it is clogged with the products of decomposition. The brain engages in a minimum of activity, but the mind of the hypnotized person can become hyperactive. It is enough to read a long poem to him once. He will repeat it without a mistake. Read him a page of the Hebrew Bible. He may not know the language, but he will echo it with exactitude. He will recall insignificant incidences from childhood. So much lies within the province of the soul. But man contains a third wonderful structure. If by his body he is akin to the animal world, this is nothing to be ashamed of, even if one is scientifically opposed to the theory of evolution. Francis of Assisi spoke about, quote, brother wolf, quote, unquote, and would gladly have said, quote, brotherly monkey, unquote. He has also a spirit by which he is akin to God. My adversaries would not even acknowledge its existence because it cannot be verified by the senses. How can it be? How can it when it is the verifier? The eye does not see itself, the nose does not smell itself, the spirit does not belong to the spectacle acted upon by the senses. It is the spectator and reacts according to its own taste to what comes within its purview. Aristotle said, if you recognize in man only the human, you betray man and wish him mischief. Because by everything which is essential in his being, the spirit, man is called to something higher than just human life. It is inhuman to be only human. It is unworthy of a caterpillar to be considered only a caterpillar. He is also a butterfly in process. So we are not allowed to degrade mankind who bears the image of God. In a seed there is more than the seed. It contains the potential flower. I cannot tell you what God looks like, but look to man. Look at the best exemplars of mankind, and you will see something of the Godhead. You will see the joy of living, the creative enthusiasm, the depths of knowledge, the taste of beauty, the exuberance of life, and the sheer ability to discern possibilities and choose to reach even higher. What a great being mankind is. He is the likeness and image of God because he is also the creator of a universe, of his own inner universe. Nature outside of me is a seething maelstrom of energy, a multitude of waves, radiations, and vibrations of electrons, protons, and elementary particles. But the wave which is dumb becomes audible in an ear. The unapprehended radiation becomes visible to an eye, and the unintelligible universe becomes intelligible in the mind of mankind. Outside of me there exists a reality. I order it in quantity, quality, causality, finality, modality. I catch this seemingly chaotic reality in a net, which has been woven by me, and make out of it an ordered universe. It is in me that nature realizes its own beauty. When I look upon a rose, it comes to life in crimson splendor and yields its fragrance. If a man does not exist, the rose would have no value and would be a mere congregation of atoms. The only subject in nature which I know intimately from the inside is myself, and in myself there is the capacity to put order in chaos, to create my own universe, whether benevolent, to give me joy, or gloomy, to drive me and others to despair. In all spheres of knowledge we live by extrapolation. We proceed from the known to the unknown. If I myself am more than any outside observer can see, is it not possible that there is more to a world around me than what appears on the surface? Lenin compliments Bishop Berkeley, the founder of the solipsist philosophy, by calling him the ideal philosopher most difficult to defeat, all because Berkeley provided a reasonable argument for faith in God, an argument which seems very powerful to me. He says that the universe can exist only in a mind. Outside the mind, reality is chaotic. It is tohu va bohu. It is the mind which organizes from it a universe, dictating its laws, putting it in the frame of ordering and categorizing it. The universe can exist only in a mind, but mankind have not existed forever, nor has the human mind. Therefore, before the appearance of mankind, there must have been another mind in which the universe existed. Mankind conceives of himself as part of an organized universe. The mind in which the universe always existed is called God. I am also a creator of a universe, an inner universe, but I am a creator. Therefore, whoever sees me sees the Father. I cannot tell you who God is, but you can understand something about the Godhead by looking at man. So that is his long chapter on who is God. Very interesting. So anyway, you guys have a great one. I hope you enjoy a little bit of Reverend Wurmbrand. That's probably takes another listen to just to grab everything that he's talking about there. But it's kind of neat. He's talking about looking outside of mankind. He's talking about looking inside human beings, seeing the way we are able to know things as being a reason for the proof of God, just the ability to know and make sense out of our world, that kind of thing. So yeah, some good stuff. Anyway, you guys have a great one, okay? And check out Voice of the Martyrs too, and take a peek at that. So you guys take care. Bye-bye.